This just in! Musk's offspring has a medical emergency while Elon trolls and rolls on Molly at CPAC. In the same instance, Steve Bannon joins in hailing Argentinian expats, role-playing and race-baiting. Much to the chagrin of his staunchly Catholic camp, will it work out in his favor, or will he end up exiled from both factions? We'll find out, folks, here at ABC! What's up, everybody? Whew, got a lot of sun today. Temperature's lovely down here, but everybody up north is freezing, so I'm glad I waited a little bit to cut back on my calorie intake. Need a little bit of extra weight for the pseudo-winter creeping in. I mean, early February tends to be the coldest month because it hits you with the, like, stacked cold, but, like, this late in February, it's a little odd. Same time, you got north of Canada and Alaska, it's particularly hot. North of Russia is particularly hot. And in southern Libya is very hot. Southwestern Libya, very, very hot. So, hope the South in America is enjoying it, and I hope the North in America is avoiding it. So, good generational juxtaposition. Look at Elon Musk, and look at Donald Trump. Generation X versus the boomers. Look at Jordan Peterson. Look at Andrew Tate. Very big juxtaposition of generational, intellectual, thought leader style position. Oh, Stephen Miller, another fine example of Generation X, just had a full-blown melty on live TV. I noticed he had a particularly high nose bridge. Very high, almost jutting out in front of the tip of his nose. When you have the full beak, it's called an aquiline nose. It comes from Aquileia. Aquileia was a Venetian colony around Grozny, which is the southernmost part of ancient Austria, but also Aquileia, which is like partially Venice. Stephen Miller, he was the one who lost 15,000 plus children out of ICE detention camps while golf carting around him with a big, fat, goofy smile, an obvious lizard person physiognomy. You know, bald is fine. I know a lot of very venerable bald men, but if you look like Rick Scott or if you look like Steve Miller, you just look like a lizard person. I'm sorry. It's just what it is. Since we're talking about lizard people, Guts from Berserk has a fascinating physiognomy, most aligned with a Celtic and Roman admixture. Very sharp, but also low-bridged nose. See, Romans tend to have a higher bridge, because they have a lot of Carthaginian admixture in them. But he also has a particularly gaunt face, with a square forehead. And I found that fascinating. He also, unlike Germans, I was guessing Germans, but Germans tend to have, not all the time, but they tend to have a lot of red and brown and blonde hair. His is black, and later black and white. There's something I've suspected for a long time. Playing off a point I made last episode. Certain elites will destroy everything in an attempt to force scientists to make a machine that allows them to live forever. I've suspected this for many, many years. And more recently, I've added into that, or that barren planets out there, not down here, are as worthy as the Earth if the Earth is completely destroyed and uninhabitable. Something to think about. I've never liked Malay. Malay is a creepy little golem. Trump is a keynote king, and Elon's kind of like a neutral paste. It's pretty boring. The austerity of Argentina will result in the invasion of Bolivia to grow cocaine. Bet on it. Evo Morales was the last one. I can't remember he was the vice president under Evo Morales, but he's the current president. He's pretty statistical and intelligent, and he's going to be pretty good at ruling Bolivia, but if you have this global, entity of King Charles Britain, of Elon Musk running the United States military, if that's a potential in the future, which it totally is, I mean, anything's possible. And Argentina just completely hollowed out. And potentially Israel too, but they don't like to lift a finger for anybody but themselves. It could end up reviving the cocaine trade. So if we destroy the cartels and revive the cocaine trade, it won't be any different. The same exact reality will befall our ancestors. I don't want to see that happen. Everybody who knows anything about Malay, who's like older than like 16, knows that he's kind of a wacky nut job, sort of doesn't understand economics, and obviously isn't loyal to the long-term success of his own country. He's even hated by like a vast majority of the police in his own country. That's an odd one. That's an odd one. When you have a right-winger who's hated by the police in his own country, that's an odd one. But you have this new faction of paramilitary security guards and stuff like that that is seemingly more and more prioritized over the police, as many police departments have become crooked and allowed themselves to become drug trafficking entities and eliminating political enemies in certain ways and just throwing innocent random people in jail, planting drugs on them, doing terrible things, killing innocent people, killing people for the littlest provocation on top of killing completely innocent people for no reason. It doesn't look good. And it opens up a big space for regular human beings to go, I don't want to join the police. I would rather go to a private paramilitary company like BlackRock or something like that, who will then be hired out to protect areas and compounds and things like that. It's not a nice future. A future where those are the intellectual hearts of the water war, and it's all against all, and these heavily vetted compounds are sending out robot dogs and then being protected by fleets of armed guards. It's not a nice looking future. People have been suspecting this for a long time, though. This isn't my own thoughts. It is what it is, Hopefully it's not, but that's the way that it's looking. People always wildly speculate about how drugs kill brain cells. Speaking of Elon. But it's rare that the actual cells in your brain die. It is. It is actually rare that the actual cells in your brain die. It usually takes place during extreme fevers, and extreme fevers can be brought on by drug use, drug withdrawal, drug overdose, etc., etc. But regular drug usage itself doesn't have that effect of frying holes in your brain, which can be detected by MRIs. Things like MDMA and amphetamines do, because they heat your body up so much, and if you take them for long periods of time, you can quite literally put holes in your brain. But that same effect isn't viewed in individuals. Individualistic cases of single use, then recovery with vitamins and sleep, etc. But it's been speculated for a long time. I'm pretty sure he's admitted that Elon is like a hardcore ketamine addict, and he does ketamine like very frequently. So it could be possible that he has like actual genuine brain damage, that it's not just an autistic thing, that he has fried holes in his brain that would take 10, 15 years to recover, if that. I've heard a lot of speculation, wide range of time that it takes to regrow brain cells from, regular amount, 7 years to 70 years, as a special type of cell that is a lot harder for your body to craft. However, knowing how the body in its entirety works on a microscopic, nanoscopic level, and how your DNA replicates things and has an auto-death cycle that allows it to cycle itself without growing cancers, which is when your cells do not have a death cycle, and then replenish in the environment that's constantly eroding them, is one of the reasons why trying to live forever is an absolute fool's errand, and we haven't even gotten close to it. It's totally possible that the DNA cell and your brain cells are just constantly regenerating themselves slowly, complexly, and then it just takes a very, very long time. Not like 70 years. Because I never saw the metric by which people guess that 70 years out. how they came to that conclusion. Nobody showed their work on that particular assumption. So, however, we do know we can show the work on how your cells regenerate in between, like the cells in your mouth, a couple of weeks, and cells in your organs, which can take like 7 years. Chronic addiction to any drug like ketamine, a dissociative similar to PCP or DXM, disrupts your brain's ability to produce certain balance of chemicals. It's the exact reason why antidepressants are evil, is because whenever you take a drug chronically, your brain shuts off its ability to produce its own neurotransmitters in that particular region where it's being supplemented. And just like if you were to use machines to help you lift all the time, you would actually get weaker. Now, I'm not saying get the little bit activating with like AI to give you a little bit of a boost. You know, sometimes if you get just one more in, it's okay to cheat a little bit on your reps. But if you were to use a machine to do it all the time, your muscles would get incredibly weak, just as you see the legs of people who drive around all the time are like toothpicks, teeny tiny toothpicks. Elon's certainly not the Antichrist. No silver tongue, and he's digitally assisted too. You can expect that later when somebody more like Nayib Bukele has immense global power, who has a tremendous amount of charisma, but also has like tons of well-armed bodies recruited in from various potentials of going to a gang, but instead working for him, which takes disabling the entire area. And it's very likely the plan Israel has for the United States. It's possible that somebody like him could potentially be the Antichrist. It was predicted, Lady Fatima, Lady Akita, Lords, that fire would fall from the sky, and then the final chastisement would begin. Then the Antichrist would come back. That could have been the firebombing of Japan, Korea, Vietnam. There's also been a massive amount of firebombing of Americans. There's been black Americans that have been firebombed by the, like Tulsa, Oklahoma, if I remember correctly. They called it Black Wall Street. And the Air Force well, it's not necessarily the Air Force back then, but planes took burning balls of pitch and dumped them all over the city from planes. And yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of people that have died from fire. There's been a lot of people that have died from drought. But at the same time, that is maybe metaphorical, you know? And the Antichrist will be somebody that very few people will suspect. And you'll probably get called crazy for suspecting that would be the Antichrist. But like the long-term goals of that individual would be total world domination and eventual enslavement. So you can bet your bottom dollar that it's going to at least be it's going to be likely from a culture that values slavery, like Islam or Judaism. But it could also be from an encomienda general from the Chinese, from the Russians, from the Americans, from the Europeans, from the Africans. It could genuinely be any one of those races if there's an encomienda person who's willing to sell out all of his peers for that. But very likely it's probably going to be an Israeli. It would make a lot of sense. As Christ came from the Hebrew line, Antichrist would very likely come from the Hebrew line. That's my speculation based on the things that I've seen in recent years and based on how I've seen the Israelis like completely and utterly manipulate the boomers out from their own religion and their own eternal peace. That's sad. It could have already been Kissinger, though. As I said, there's already been a lot of firebombing. It could have been legitimately Kissinger, and we're already living in the wake of the Antichrist's reign. It's entirely possible. Kissinger hits me 100% as an Antichrist-like figure. He has more blood on his hands than, like, Hitler. He's got way more blood on his hands than Hitler. He's like an equivalent Stalin-Mao level mass murderer. If you don't believe me, you got to look up his history and what he did in Southeast Asia. Long-term implications of what he's done it sticks with us to this day. Mossad has been working very hard with online bots to make as many people neo-Nazis or strict Zionists as possible. Pull them way apart into these separate camps. And if you know, a lot of Zionists are pro-LGBT, pro-massive amounts of drugs, pro-immigration. They are, just straight up. That's not even a close to speculation, 100% truth. And then the neo-Nazis are far right, but they still answer to people in charge who answer to the Israelis. So you can see this. I've described it before. It's not that hard to get. And it would make sense. Make as many people neo-Nazis as possible to justify all-out war with all nations and Mossad's own existence. And you have a lot of autistic people who want to fit in. Swear to God, you got a lot of people who don't take social cues very well who are being targeted for this particular movement. You know, grudges aren't venerable, but philosophies that encourage grudges begrudgingly must be bid against. Brings me no pleasure. And if you really want to defeat evil, you must have no pleasure in your art. You must have no enjoyment of it when you finally do bring the axe down. It's the only way to do it. And in Warhammer 40k, the only way to kill Lucius, who is like an immortal being that, from the Emperor's Children, the Phoenicians, that possesses whoever kills him last. And Raven Guard killed him by having zero enjoyment in so doing. Sorry if that spoiled it. Pretty sure I'm not sure if that's canon though, so I might not have spoiled it. But yeah, 19th. My boys. Speaking about boys, the Pontius and my boy P.O., they just released a very interesting video dunking on female space marines, and then they said Gav Thorpe was a bad writer, and I was like, oh man, I like Gav Thorpe. Come on, man, he's a great intro. Let him be a bridge builder, man. Come on. Don't decanonize Thorpe. Come on. After Israel got so much money from Biden, I assume they're sinking it all into these various projects I've just discussed. I'm sorry this is such a politics-heavy episode. It probably isn't all that enjoyable, but it is what it is. It's what's been on my mind. And you know, whether it's Israel, whether it's Germany, whether it's Taiwan, or whether it's El Salvador, they can afford a facade, but no guts. No guts. And by the way, that's not fascism. Fascism is a system where will is the primary currency. That's what fascism is. And you know what? International welfare also atrophies the natural economy of a country the same it does as a individual or household. That's not to speak on the places where rent is like $40,000 a month. That is to speak on the when you don't have to work for something, it still costs you. And so you should be very wary when you ask for handouts, and you should only do it if you need to do it. You've seen plenty of good people. I've seen plenty of good people who have become worse people after they started to make money real easy. That's why I'm not a fan of these paper pusher jobs. And I also don't think just because you make a paycheck and punch a pay clock, that makes you part of the most important class of people, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That is that is flat thinking. That is ironing out all the various striations that reality shows. And there is no such thing as a working class. Go ahead and ask other workers in other departments if they have any solidarity towards you. That's exact. If they did, you wouldn't have unions. I'm not a huge fan of unions, but I think like electrical unions are important because electricity scares the crap out of me. And because I know how easy it is to die when you're working on electricity. So I think that's one of the good ones, you know, electrical workers union. A toe cutters union. No, I saw that on a truck driving around the other day, and the truck had the 3 spiral triangles which is like, whoa, dude, you hardly ever see that in history. What that is the triskelion, which is the Celtic three swirl, turned into a Nordic pagan symbol. Just goes to show the Celts led the Germans. It is what it is. I love for my Germans, but still, like the Nazi ideology of the Aryan race, which is literally Indian, and the superiority of the Germans to the Slavs, and how all the Western land is rightfully theirs because Burgundy did it. Well, so did Attila the Hun. So did Attila the Huns, and there's a reason why the IRA calls the British Huns. Get it? Got it? Good. I wouldn't say this if it wasn't true, but Doge is just straight up fabricating the numbers that they're saving the American taxpayer on at this point. It's been pretty much proven at this point. And that doesn't mean that the two worst government programs are USAID and Doge. Those are the two worst programs in this country at this point. And Doge can still pull it around. They can still turn around. They can still pull up. They can still make a left turn. But at this rate, they're going to crash right into the wall real quickly, and Trump will be like, Anyways, as I said, it doesn't mean I don't still believe in Trump. But Elon and Malay represent a deeply satanic philosophy. Swear to God. Anarcho-capitalism and its libertarian specter is deeply satanic. I've been saying this for a while. They're the softest form of Satanism. Talking snake, right? So they got the talking snake on their flag, right? The talking snake, the one talking snake, you know what I'm saying? And I'm sure it has some crap to do going back to the Gadsden and Guadalupe War and the Spanish-American War and all this. But our founding fathers, who were Masons, who were saying, oh, look, there are hoop snakes, which is literally just the Ouroboros rolling around. There's a lot of Masons screwing with our founding fathers, and the Masons were lying about in 1775 about how homunculus could read the future, and so they were manipulating people real hardcore when America was being founded, and America backed off of that quite a bit. Otherwise, we would never have had. We got away from it. Most importantly, otherwise we would have never had genius, wonderful, brilliant people like Abraham Lincoln and his poet Walt Whitman, and we would have never been such a great country until people like FDR and Truman literally just dashed it all across the rocks, which Woodrow Wilson and his predecessor, the Tubby Taft, man, they weren't that great. And I'd say Woodrow Wilson is one of the worst presidents, one of the three worst presidents of all time. It's very hard to tell. Andrew Johnson, terrible, terrible, terrible. The guy who took over after Lincoln died and completely and utterly obliterated all of his plans to fix the country. Woodrow Wilson, Joe Biden, very, very bad. Very, 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 very bad presidents. And I've studied most of the presidents. I know most of them by name. Ulysses is an amazing name. Grant's first name was Ulysses. How amazing was that? 5-star name. Absolute kino. But anyways, the farther Malay and Elon run with the narrative, the worse things will be. And the more regular people will buy tickets to the train to hell. As I said, Trump can still turn it around. Gotta keep praying for the president. Well, that's a good episode for today. I hope everybody takes it easy, and you northerners stay warm up there. Cheers.